11th, 2015 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. It's approximately 5:34 p.m. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Williams?
I am here today.
Councilman Burgess?
Here.
Councilman Maldonado? Absent. Councilwoman Fairclough? Here. Councilwoman Waldman? Absent. Vice Mayor Shelley?
Here.
Mayor Porter?
Here. Any additions, deletions, or deferrals?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to request an executive session in the case of Lillet Sports versus City of Homestead.
All right, sir. Okay, if there's no objections from the council, we'd like to move tab 14 to the beginning of the agenda. Any opposed?
Tab 14, Mayor, that's the item that,
Discussion item?
discussion item that I brought forward.
Okay, we'll go to tab 14.
Mayor, just to brief the council, the Housing Trust Group has submitted a letter of intent, which is in your packet. They're here to give a presentation, but just to kind of get a sense of what we're looking for you from tonight, because this is really a CRA item, but due to their timeline, they've got some very tight timelines in terms of applying for funding. So what we wanted to do is get them before you as quickly as our first meeting, which is today, so that they can make a presentation, explain what they have here, and then if there's direction for the staff to start working on this, we're going to have to prepare a very tight time frame, which may include some additional meetings. And then there's one correction here. Their letter says it's 100 units. They're proposing 110 units, just for the record, okay?
Okay.
And with that, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
And Commissioners, my name's Chris Shear. I'm a developer with Housing Trust Group. We're a Miami-based affordable housing developer. Been around since about 1997, primarily utilizing the low-income housing tax credit program to build multifamily affordable housing. We have been reviewing this site.
Give us one second. Mr. Williams?
Yes, thank you. Can I lay the groundwork on this?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm the one that brought this group forward. Let me just give some history about this particular piece of property located in the southwest area of Homestead, and used to be known as the shotgun properties. The reason why they were called shotgun properties because they were basically, you walk in the front door and you walk out the same within two or 3 feet of it. And they were very much, for lack of a better word, substandard housing. And my predecessor, Melvin McCormick, demolished the site. Of course, there's a lot of different other things that were attached to that site that gave it the name Shotgun Properties. But however, that land has been vacant since 2000 and I believe 8. There's not been any development, and one of my goals were to bring in a developer that can come in that had the know-how, the history, the experience to be able to develop this site. And I think it's approximately about 4.5 acres or so. And the intent of this is to really enhance the southwest areas. As most of you all know, I laid out a plan a couple months ago that dealt with how can we combat crime and all of that kind of stuff. And I think this is a major, this will be a major uplift for the southwest area and the greater Homestead area within itself. As you know, most of major development is taking place on the east side of the highway, as far as housing, and the residents and persons who live in the southwest really don't have any nice standard accommodation of living with luxury or amenities that maybe perhaps the east side of the highway has been able to do. Here's a developer to come in to offer us a purchase price with also shares within the revenues of the completion of the building. And I think they're looking at 110 units. 4-story building, and I think this is going to really change the entire um, dynamic of the Southwest area, and it's going to bring in some needed housing for the people that deserve quality. When we talk about raising quality of life, housing is the most important thing. And so the land has been vacant. We talked about schools there. We don't need another school there. We've already blocked that out. And so what the residents need in that area is housing that is affordable, housing that is has amenities, clubhouse, pool, whatever they are suggesting to us tonight, and luxury. It's going to change the entire face on Lucy Street. And so I'm hoping in their presentation that they will make sure, and we're talking about over 800 some full-time construction jobs that will come into that area for the Southwest residents. And hopefully we can hear more about from their presentation. But I wanted the person that on the boots, on the ground there, to really corral my colleagues to really understand the sensitivity of this and the urgency of it, that this is going to be a first-class, hopefully, project in which the Southwest area really needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Did a great job covering a lot of the aspects that I'm going to get into a little more depth on. This property in particular, being a large contiguous development site, is well suited for multifamily development. There is a current zoning classification that allows 88 units. As the Commissioner indicated, we are proposing 110, and that's primarily because of our financing requirements. In order to secure the funding that we're going to be applying for, and that's the low-income housing tax credit, the state requires that we have 110 units minimum. That is the discrepancy between what's existing and what we would ultimately request through a zoning or rezoning or upzoning for the property itself. The highlights of our proposal, as the Commissioner indicated, we are looking for a way to give you a fair market valuation on the property. Based on our research, we've come up with a valuation of $1.1 million. It's about $10,000 per unit. That seems to be within the market comps for recent land sales. Went out a little further than a 3 mile. I think we looked at almost a 5 and 10 mile radius. So that covers a pretty large span of area. Of course, we'd secure an appraisal to justify that valuation, and we would look to make that payment either by virtue of a purchase and sale agreement, or we would convey the land through a long-term ground lease. It doesn't matter for us. With a long-term ground lease, we can capitalize the payment. So effectively, that long-term ground lease of 65 years plus, you would have a payment at closing, just as with the purchase and sale agreement, of the $1.1 million. And I can't quite see the monitor, so I have my presentation over here, so bear with me as I kind of look back and forth, please. The other thing that we thought was important in speaking with the Commissioner is to find a way to integrate the CRA. This property is within the CRA, and we'd like to offer, in addition to the purchase price, an ownership stake with the CRA that allows them to participate in the deal, have some authority over the development program, and allow them to be integral in the design and execution of this development. We have not identified a specific demographic to serve. We can serve a family demographic or an elderly demographic. If there is a strong need and demand for elderly housing, we would consider that and just leave that open for discussion. The product type itself, as you can see, I've brought a couple of representative deals. Our product type, when you're driving in front of it, if you were to look at it next to a market rate development, although this is workforce and affordable housing, you truly would not know the difference in our product. The real differences are pretty nominal in the finishes. That's typically where the differences come in. You know, we may not be able to support the installation of granite, but we'll have a high-end Formica countertop, for instance. So, but on the surface, our buildings are built pursuant to our requirements with the state to largely a higher standard than a lot of the market rate developments. We have a green building certification that we're required to, you know, to integrate, and that's either through the LEED program or through the NGBS program. Hopefully you guys can read this, but some of the amenities that we include, which are standard in our developments at HTG, and we really try to build a strong product that's able to build a sense of community. We want people to be happy and you know, excited about where they live and really be proud of it. So we often have resident programs as well as a big amenity package. Amenities include community spaces or clubhouses, depending on the type of development. Tot lots, playgrounds, those are pretty much a fixture and standard practice for us. We also include a computer center or business center, and you know, some of the other things are fitness centers or other you know, outdoor amenities such as basketball, volleyball courts, that sort of you know, outdoor play feature. With the amenities, we focus also on the residents. And the residents will have opportunities to various resident programs that we'll manage either with a third party, we'll manage directly with our property management team. And just to give you a little bit of structure on HTG, we're a fully integrated development firm. We have our asset management, property management in-house. Actually have a couple of HTG's property managers here with us today. If you have any questions for them, we can bring them up. We have our construction team. We have a general contractor who's in-house as well. Our development staff is all in-house. We have a number of lawyers on staff, and we, you know, we're fully integrated, vertically integrated, if you will. So we're able to be efficient, and I think that's what makes us productive in, you know, the realm of development that we play in. Getting into some of the, I think the good stuff is the CRA benefits. Can I just go back one slide? So, as the Commissioner indicated, let's look at what this will bring to the community in addition to, you know, $1 million or so purchase price. I think there's some ancillary benefits that are just as important. And there's just kind of a general calculator that we use to figure out, based on a 100-unit development, it's about 80 construction jobs. So we have about 88 construction jobs that'll be generated, and you know, there's also a calculation of ongoing and permanent jobs that are supported by way of the development. It's probably about 33. I don't think I even listed it here. However, it's something to just kind of keep in mind, is that this development, with any other multifamily development, will have ongoing jobs that are created. We're able to commit and willing to commit to utilizing Section 3 practices, which will commit us to using local residents for those jobs. We often enter into agreements with the CRAs that we work with to use local participation and local labor, and we feel strongly about that, and keeping the jobs local, keeping the jobs within the CRA, within the city of Homestead, within the county, and ultimately, you know, within the state to the greatest extent possible. In addition, this property will be placed on the tax rolls. This is going to generate, typically in the county, we're looking at $850 to $900 per unit per year in property taxes that are assessed. So let's call it $100,000 estimated in property tax revenue, irrespective of the CRA's or city's participation in the development. You know, generally with development, you're going to have permit, impact fees, connection fees, just, you know, identifying those, although those are purely estimations at this time. But given our experience in developing a lot of property in the county, I'd say that's a pretty good rough estimate. And, you know, we do want to tie this to the busway. We're close enough to the busway to try to make that a nice feature, include the streetscapes, try to give some connection to the busway to make it more of a transit-oriented development. You know, and lastly, we're just looking at this development on Lucy Street to really be the catalyst for new commercial development, future multifamily development. You know, we see a lot of this in many neighborhoods after we build. The neighbors will upgrade their single-family homes. People will take a little more pride, and it's just it's a nice ancillary effect that we see in many cases.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Could you go through some of your photographs of some of your projects that you've done? Currently, recently, you just did something in Overtown, Miami, with
There's
Keone Hardeman and Audrey Edmondson's district within the county. Could you go through some of your projects? Yeah, like that. Yeah, so that's
Yes,
what
sir.
I'd like to see.
Okay, so
Show me.
these are all relatively new projects. Yeah, this is it's an actual picture here. I
In Fort
believe.
Lauderdale, right?
This is a Fort Lauderdale. This is an elderly demographic that we received an award of 9% credits, which is the same thing we're pursuing here. Just to give you kind of an idea of what our product looks like. This is a different product than we would be proposing here, as it's a 6-story. It's a very urban infill site. However, if this is what ultimately is the desire and we can get rezoning for, we would certainly consider. It's 112 units. These are a few images of some of the amenities. We have the community center. It's it's got a swimming pool. It's got a library, and I'm sure I'm missing something. You can just see these are a few images of our community center. This is Veranda, which is just outside of Homestead. Veranda Apartments is another elderly demographic apartment that was funded and actually completed construction just 2 years ago, I believe. So it's a relatively new product. I would welcome anybody who wants to visit it, get my information or one of the property managers here to set up a site visit. We're happy to do it. It's a great product, 100% full, 100% occupied, very little turnover. 3-story, this is more of the product that we had identified for this site, something of this scale. This building does have elevators, and with elderly projects, we always include elevators as stairs become a real issue. Veranda has a swimming pool, clubhouse, community center, kind of our standard amenity package, but I think by the way of the pictures, you can kind of understand the finished product, which is largely in line with the quality of a market rate development. This is representative of a townhome development that we have in Pinellas County. It's a 2-story townhomes and then a mix of garden units. We received funding on this last year through the 9% credit cycle, so we've been very successful in submitting applications for this financing. And this is the one that Commissioner Williams was speaking of. This we broke ground on in May of this year, and this is in partnership with the Overtown CRA. The Overtown CRA has a land loan in the development. The Overtown CRA has a soft loan in the development. Miami-Dade County owns the land underneath the development through which we are under a long-term ground lease. We have Miami-Dade County and the surtax program also providing a loan in this development. And it's a true public-private partnership. It's 84 units, 6-story building, all the amenities again. We're under construction. We're about 20% complete now in partnership not only with the CRA, but also with a nonprofit group that Alonzo Mourning heads. AM Affordable Housing is his first venture into affordable housing. It's largely in the community through Overtown Youth Center, through Tracy's Honey Shine program, and this is his first venture into housing, and I think he's excited to do the next phase of this deal. So this was development that we're all very proud of at Housing Trust Group, and we'd like to replicate, in the city of Homestead, and with the CRA. This is development we're hoping to close in September, urban infill development directly behind Hospital. It's in the hospital district, the health district in the city of Miami. And again, we have 9% tax credits on this, and high-rise development, podium parking, very tight, difficult site to build on. We were able to to really maximize the development site itself, and we're able to build 73 units. Pine Run Villas is it's a townhome development in Palm Beach County, and I believe it's in Lake Worth. If it's not, it's in unincorporated Palm Beach. 63 unit, relatively small development. This was a 4% tax exempt bond deal. And that's what I'd like to point out too. We're not only going to go after the 9% tax credits, that's just one execution structure. It's the most economically beneficial execution structure, however. Nonetheless, if we're not successful in this competitive process, we have another 2 opportunities to execute this development and find the gap financing necessary to execute a 4% non-competitive development. So there are 2 opportunities out there at the state level, in addition to Miami-Dade having their surtax program, that allow us to find the sources necessary to execute a bond, tax-exempt bond 4% transaction. So we would look at a structure that gives us the opportunity to get this property into the cycle this year for the 9%, but also the time as we dedicate resources to execute on the non-competitive structure. You know, when we dedicate resources to something, we typically find a way to get it done. It just takes time. We're commingling a number of sources together, but we've been very successful at doing that, and you have to be creative, and I think we got the resources and we know where they are to make that happen. Just a couple pictures on the interiors of Pine Run Villas. And largely that is just a small representation of our development products, and I'm open to any questions at this point.
Any questions? Mr. Burgess, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Mayor.
I just want to ask you, did you have a question? Because I can't.
Oh, I've got several. So
you want to go ahead?
You phase me in whenever you want. If you'd like me to begin, I would.
You're up if you're ready.
Okay, yeah. Excuse me. You talked about, you know, all the amenities that are going to come. So I guess one of my questions is, what is the square footage of a unit if you're going to have outdoor parks and all the green space items that you spoke of in a building on 4.5 acres?
Yeah, I'd say the average square foot area of an individual unit, it'll likely be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, largely 2 bedrooms. Ultimately, if it's an elderly demographic, it'll be heavily weighted on the 1s. Our 1 bedrooms are typically 600 to 650 square feet. Our 2 bedrooms are typically 700 to 800 square feet, and the 3 bedrooms are generally 850 to 950. So I think on average, you're looking at about 800 square feet per unit.
Okay. And as you spoke on one of your descriptions, you were talking about parking and all that. What's the proposed parking for these, for 112 units? Where are these people going to park with that project there? Because assuming, I mean, I don't have a drawing or anything from you guys showing me how things would be situated on the land, so it's hard for me to visualize everything exactly how it would be. How are we going to put 112 units worth of vehicles in that area down there?
Yeah, we are looking at surface parking, and we haven't done site planning. We haven't done conceptual site planning. I think that would be a welcome next step that we would, we'd be encouraged to take on if, if we're able to move forward with this transaction. But in general, the way we were looking at this site is we would look at doing a 4-story structure along Lucy, and that's on the main frontage, with 2 to 3-story structures, and I apologize, I don't know the street to the north, but that would be the 2 to 3-story structures along the single-family homes. So you have a little bit of a massing and scale that fits with the community, with surface parking integrated in there. Now, one thing about affordable housing, and the reason we want to make this more of a transient-oriented development with ties to the busway, is that you're going to see less need for units to have automobiles than you would in a market rate development.
I believe that to be a true statement in downtown Miami, but unfortunately, I don't believe that to be, and this is my feeling, and Homestead to be a totally true statement, because we are so far removed from a lot of workplaces that unfortunately our people suffer through, and we've all talked about transportation and the lack of it down in Homestead through the busway, that unfortunately our folks are forced to have cars. So that's something that does concern me, and I understand in some of your other projects that are probably in the middle of towns or the middle of large cities where transportation isn't needed, they can walk or they can get on a bus more easily than that. So I think that we need to really look at that as one of the issues I see.
It's a good point. It's a good point, and you know, that's something that we would certainly get into the analysis of. We haven't gotten to that step yet. We would take that into consideration when we do our market study and market evaluations. We'd look at that closely as to how we're site planning. Although something is afforded perhaps for a reduction in parking by code, clearly this needs to go through the planning process, and you know, we would look for that feedback not only from the city, but also from, you know, staff who are reviewing development plans.
Right. And speaking of staff, I assume is Mr. Cordino at the desk tonight?
No, sir, he's not. Someone's here.
Joe's on vacation, but
Okay.
Michelle is here from the department.
And how does this fit into the mix over there with the units that are around it, one, and two, as we all voted unanimously, is whenever a project like this comes on, one of the first things we're supposed to do is reach out to the neighbors, whether it be residential or commercial, and make sure everybody's on board with this before we push it along. Has that process had anything done with that process?
Well, I can answer the first question on the neighborhood. This, because of their tight time frame, what we wanted to do first is bring them in, introduce you to this project so you can kind of get a general sense of what it is, and then if in fact there's some interest, then we'll start an official process. There's a lot of things, due diligence, and a lot of things they have to do and we have to do, so none of that has been done yet. But on the second question, Michelle, did you want to answer that?
With respect to compatibility to the surrounding neighborhood, we did drive the site at the end of last week, and the buildings surrounding that site are either one-story or two-story buildings. So this structure would be higher.
Correct. Okay. All right, Mr. Mayor, I've got more questions, but in the sake of time and other people that are there that can ask questions a little more easily than I can, I'll surrender my time for now and hopefully that my other questions get answered, and then I'll ask if they don't.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Manager. Tell us exactly what you need tonight. I mean, this is kind of, we're looking at pictures from other communities. There's really no idea exactly what they're doing. We know they're asking for 110 units, which is a rezoning process. So what is it that exactly we're talking about tonight?
The main driver tonight is when they disclosed to us that for this first opportunity for funding, they have they wanted us to be completely done with our process by November 2nd or 3rd, somewhere around there. And so there's a lot of things that have to be done. So if your answer tonight is we don't want it, then we'll tell them that. If your answer is we're interested, then they're going to have to start doing their work, and we're going to have to do our work, and then at the next meeting we'll bring you a calendar, because there's some technical issues that we still haven't worked out, a la the pump station and a la what kind of zoning mechanisms that would be needed for this. Still a lot of things, because they've already said to us that they haven't done a lot of due diligence because they just kind of getting introduced to the site as well. So this is new for them as well, but they seem very interested in pushing to get to their deadline. But what we're looking for you is from some direction is, should they and should the staff start the process and see where we're at for the next meeting, or not? And I think that's all we're looking for. We're not looking for you to say, it's approved, go ahead. We also have some negotiations that we'd need to do, and you know, there's a bunch of other things, but this is really just the preliminary taking of your temperature.
Okay. Ms. Fairclough?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Everybody in this room knows that that's a very controversial site. So in my opinion, I think it's very important for us to make sure we get this right and not rush it. I thank you for having an interest in Homestead. I thank you, Councilman Williams, for wanting to bring something to this site that has kind of been languishing along for some time. I have a couple of questions. You proposed 1.1 million for the site. How much did we pay for it? Was it 1.9?
1.95.
1.95. Were you aware of our purchase price for this site?
I was not.
Okay, so we paid 1.9 million for the site, and I'm not for leaving anything on the table. I'm not leaving any money out there on the table. Can you speak a little bit more about your resident programs? You kind of glossed over that. Can you
Sure.
speak more specificity about your residential programs?
Sure. I have my guru here. She'll be able to get you all the details. This is Gilda Fernandez from Housing Trust Group. She's our Senior Vice President of Property Management.
Hi. Resident programs we have after-school care programs, we have nutrition and health classes, we have, now I'm drawing a blank, but we have literacy programs. Yes, we have employee assistants, family coordinators. Those are some of the new things that we're doing now.
Who runs these programs?
We run them. Management company runs them.
Talk to me about your literacy programs or your employee assistant program.
Well, the employee assistance program, we do get help from different, either from the community or from the city of Miami or from the city of Homestead to come in and have space for them to help the residents. We help them with their resumes, doing their resumes, learning how to interview, getting them help in whichever way they can.
And your literacy?
Literacy, we help them. Usually we find teachers who come in and help teach them how to read, whatever is the need, either children or adults.
Which one of your sites can I visit to see this in action?
We have them going on, in Veranda, I don't think we have the literacy program, but I will find out for you.
Okay. The Veranda is the one
Veranda Senior.
Closest to?
It is.
What is the address for that one?
The address is 28355 Southwest 152nd Avenue.
Do you have any statistics or stats on the effectiveness of these programs, particularly the literacy and the employee assistance program?
I do not have them with me, but I can get them
But you
for you.
have it? You have it?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to that, thank you. I would like a site visit so that I can see it firsthand.
Okay, I'll give you my information and we can get together and we can definitely do some site visits.
Okay.
Okay?
And this is to staff. Currently, on that site, how many units are approved for that? Is it 24 or something like that?
The current density as established in the Southwest Master Plan, the zoning code, and the comp plan is 20 units per acre.
20 units per acre.
Per acre, and the site is 4.16 acres. So that's, do a quick calculation.
Per acre.
The project can afford 83 units as currently zoned.
Okay. Thank you. And looking at, may I continue, Mayor? I'm sorry.
You have the floor. You have the floor.
And looking at some of your projects, they look like quality projects. But what I don't want to see is another low-income community. I grew up in public housing, so I'm not far removed from that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see another low-income community that can potentially turn into another housing project. I don't think any of us want that. And we tend to, respect and take the lead of our colleagues who represent the district. And I know you're really excited about this, Councilman Williams, but this is something I don't want to see. Don't want to see another housing project.
Sure.
I kind of always envisioned a mixed use or potentially something geared towards the elderly. I would be probably more amenable to that. So I just need a little bit more time to kind of wrap my mind around it and ensure that I understand everything that you're planning, because you really haven't flushed out all the details yet. So I can't make a commitment to anything now because you don't have all the details.
Well, let me give you just a little bit of information on why this would not be representative of a public housing development that you may see and be familiar with.
No, I'm not saying public, I'm just giving you a frame of reference. What I said, I don't want it to turn into another housing project because depending upon who you're catering to and the demographic that you're reaching out to, it could potentially and very well turn into that.
Well,
I would prefer, if I may finish,
sure.
I would prefer or be more amenable to a mixed use or something geared towards the elderly.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I do hear your concern. This type of development, just to give you a little difference from how it's different than a public housing asset or a project-based Section 8 asset. This asset will be constrained by a certain percentage of the county's area median incomes. Currently, the program is set up for 90% of those units to be set aside at 60% of the area median income. When you look at the area median incomes in this market, this submarket, so we'll call it the mile radius, those rents are at or above actually the market rate level rents. So the tenants that we'd be drawing are likely to come from outside of the area and within the area, but they're not going to be, they all go through a very, very detailed vetting process. Typically, we're catering to single mothers who have long-term job stability. They all have jobs, let's put it that way. Like we have to have an income stream. We have to have income certifications. It's not a Section 8 program where you pay 30% of your income, which could be zero, where you're paying $0 to live there. No, we have to generate revenue. We take market risk here. Our program is subject, we don't get a subsidy on the operating side. Our subsidy comes in the tax credits, which is on the front end to build the project. Therefore, we carry less debt and we can charge lower rents. There's no subsidy on the operating side, so I don't receive any subsidy from HUD every month at the fair market rents or at a reduced rent. So that's a big difference in how we operate it. We have a lot of oversight in this program, and that's one of the reasons why the program is so successful in general, is they bring in private investment who we have a 200-page operating agreement from a large financial institution who usually invest in, we're talking $20 million here into the project, but they want to make sure that their investment is protected so that they get their tax credits, which are their benefit. It's kind of tax credits 101 there, but there's a lot of backstops in place to make sure that these properties are operated with the utmost integrity, including all those compliance measures. The state has annual audits of the property. We do accept tenant-based Section 8 vouchers, but those are at will. A tenant can decide to live here. They can decide to live in a single-family home that's approved by HUD. So we will accept them, of course. We certainly have to through FHA, but there's not 100% contract over it where everybody is only paying 30% of their income. So the demographic tends to be workforce housing, and in this market, if you look around the market, the 60% rents that we're at are actually the market rents, if not a little bit above market rents for this particular submarket. And that may change in 20 years as things continue to gentrify in the area, where this would be, a discount to the market rents, but for the foreseeable future, typically within that 15-year compliance period, which is where we're looking at, this would operate in line with the market rate developments in the area.
Mayor, just one clarification, because we looked at this issue. I know the nomenclature is used interchangeably, but I just want to make sure everybody understands we're all using the same language here. There's public housing, a la the housing authority or homeless shelters, or the things that the government builds and runs. And then on the private housing side, there's a whole gamut of language that's used. What they're proposing is low-income housing, which is 60% of median income, except for the 10%, which is extremely low, category called extremely low income. And then you have above those, you have affordable housing, which is typically 80%. Workforce housing can sometimes be somewhere between 80 and 100% and 110%. So there really are tiers of language. Sometimes everybody calls the whole group low-income housing or affordable housing, but in terms of the categories by definitions, just that we're all on the same page. Not public housing, private housing, 10% extremely low income, and 90% at low-income housing. And that's basically what they proposed, and it's not senior, it's general, I guess anybody. And one other thing I wanted to mention is initially they came in, I know there may be some concern about height, initially they came in with an idea for a 3-story building, but they were walk-ups, and the staff was concerned that that might become problematic and also eliminate the possibility of seniors on the 3rd floor. So they came in with the 4-story structure with elevators. They didn't want to do the 3-story because of the concerns about the cost of the elevator. But again, I think all of those issues are negotiation items. I think it's first a question of conceptually where you're at with that. But I just wanted to make sure on the nomenclature we were all on the same page.
Okay. Ms. Fairclough, you still
Yes,
have the
I still
floor.
have the floor. Thank you, Mayor. All of your projects are principally residential? You don't have any mixed-use projects?
We have small mixed-use components in a couple of developments that we're planning to close, but largely no. If it's driven by the market, we will certainly integrate it. In many cases, though, it's not viable. It's tough to support that commercial unit. Typically what we'll do, just out of goodwill, is we'll rent it to a community business organization or rent it to the CRA, who will bring in a local business that they're working with. So we're certainly open to that, but it, there is a cost aspect to it, so we just got to be conscious of that.
I think it's something you should consider, because in the southwest section, if I should say so myself, they're lacking in commercial. It's principally residential. So you may want to consider a mixed-use project since you haven't flushed out everything yet. I think mixed use would be a great step to take. In addition to that, is the veranda project your only senior apartment facility?
No, the images you saw of Village Place in Fort Lauderdale
Village.
Is a recently completed senior demographic. Senior demographic, just for clarification, is 55 plus. So we actually have a lot of working couples who are in the property, who qualify given the age requirements. So we see seniors tend to, looking at more 2 bedrooms than the kind of the traditional small studio or 1-bedroom unit mix for a senior deal.
Just for full disclosure, if we proceed, I would be more interested in something tailored to seniors as opposed to any other demographic. But I would like to follow up and meet with you and your team, and particularly the management company, to look at the other ancillary programs that you have for the residents, because I think it's very important in that particular community that we cater to kids, cater to parents, as opposed to just providing clubhouses and pools, but providing some resources that can help build their capacity. So if I can have your information before you leave, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Be happy to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I echo a lot of what my colleagues have already stated. I concur with Councilwoman Fairclough in that I'm more interested in probably the senior element of housing than I am anything else. I think that's something that the city of Homestead, we need. We have a lack of. We always have. I mean, back when I was on P&Z years ago, we were asking for some type of senior elderly housing to come to the city. So I think that's a good fix, as well as mixed use or some sort of commercial aspect. Those are all things that I also envisioned possibly going on that site. But my biggest concerns, I guess, that I have is more so about the density of it. And that is, you showed all these other projects, and most of them were, say, 60 to 80 something units, and then you're proposing 110 for this one, saying that that's what's required in order to get the grant, in order to qualify for certain criteria. So my question is, why such a higher density here than some of your other projects that you just showed us?
Yeah, it's largely the 9% developments are, in a way, a competitive application process. So the land that we applied for only had the maximum density that would allow for that number of units. So it was more about those applications being selected than perhaps some of the more desired developments that we submitted that actually had larger densities. we could support more units in those developments by right. We would have built more units as of right. The way that the state set it up, as they want to see more density in Miami-Dade because we clearly have the largest need. So they've made this year a requirement that any development south of, I think it's 199th, will be required to have 110 units or more. So they're looking at everything north of that being more infill, where we have more land south of it. So it's an easier product to build on a larger, on a larger scale here.
Okay, so it's the state that requires it. Because density is my concern. I mean, even with the Southwest Master Plan, I know as a matter of right, it's 20 units per acre. And I had concerns about that when I was on P&Z, 5, 6 years ago, we adopted that. Concerns about putting that much density on the west side of town where we don't really have the infrastructure as far as roadways, et cetera, to get people in and out. And so this is one project of potentially many projects that may occur. And so, as you start to add more and more density into an area that doesn't have the infrastructure to support it, and also has very narrow roadways such that you don't really have the ability to expand that infrastructure to then accommodate the density, that was always my concern then. And so I was not really even supportive of the current 20 units per acre that's in the Southwest Master Plan. And now you're coming and saying that even that's not sufficient. And so you're asking to expand that density even further to now 27 or 28 units per acre. It gets to be to the point where, I have real concerns about the effect that could have long term on the area. I think your projects look great. I mean, as far as what you've shown and what your credentials are, I think you have a product that looks good. But it's the density, strictly the density issue that I have a concern the effect it'll have on the neighborhood. Because I live in the northwest part of town, we have the same issue. We don't have a lot of infrastructure as far as roadways. And they're building new homes and stuff out there, but they're only, a lot of them on half-acre home sites. And as those have come online, the traffic to get from east to west and west to east and even north and south on Chrome and then US 1 has really gotten to a point where it's affected the quality of life in there. And so I can only imagine what 20 units per acre could do, much less 28 units per acre. And so there's a density issue that I really don't know that I can get over. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that. And then the other issue I have also is this tight time frame where, it's kind of a rush. I don't like when things come to me and it's a rush. And I echo some of my colleagues' sentiments, and that is, I don't think we have really enough information here to make a informed decision. And I know from speaking to staff that, to go through this process, there's comp plan amendments, there's the Southwest Master Plan amendment may have to be amended, there's site plans. I mean, it's quite intensive, which is also very costly for you. So I'd hate to give you direction to say go forth and then find out when the actual details come through that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You guys are already out some monies for, development costs, et cetera. So that's my other concern, is that you really have placed us under the gun in the current scenario. So I just want to make sure you're aware of those two items.
No, I appreciate your comment, and it certainly is a quick timeline, but I just want to be clear that the timeline that we proposed is by no means the timeline of which we will actually commence development and have an entitled project. This is purely the timeline for the application, which requires, unfortunately, these nuances that we would have to address. Once we have an application submitted, and that's one of the reasons we're proposing to have the CRA involved in the actual ownership aspect, because we'd like to work holistically with the city to be able to come up and address all of those issues that you just identified, which are all real issues. The one hang-up there is the zoning. So that would have to be a decision that the city would have to make sooner than later. But when it comes down to how do we address the infrastructure, there's always a way to address it. What the cost is, maybe, may or may not be an issue, but we would look at all of that in conjunction with staff and with representatives of the city.
Right. No, I understand that. It's just my concern is that in order for you guys to get where you need to go, we have to then pass these comp plan amendments, the amendment to the south, to allow for that extra density, to allow that zoning to take place. And when you get to that point, now have we opened up Pandora's box? Are we allowing other developers to then come in at a future date and request similar zoning, or does it give them a zoning as a matter of right? Those are all questions that I have and concerns that I have. And so that's kind of where the tight time frame does start to affect your ability to get what you need to get done, and us to get the information we need to make the informed decisions. And so that's something that concerns me.
So, Commissioner, your understanding is that the comp plan would have to be amended as well as just the zoning?
If
Mayor,
staff.
if you'd like, we could go through the process. See, the thing is, we didn't want to dwell too much on the process if you liked what it was. So we like to start with the beginning and with the end in mind. If this is what you wanted, we'd figure out how to make it work, or at least we'd get pretty close. But there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle, so if you want, we're happy to, Michelle or James, did you want to start and go through?
Well, let me ask you a question. There's concerns from at least 3 about the project as is stated. My concerns are very much the same and even a little bit more. The gentleman said that the pricing structure of these apartments is going to bring people from the outside into the community, because it's not necessarily going to help the community, because the median income levels you said were already lower than what you would need for the...
Sorry, not exactly. What I was saying is that the 60% AMI rents are effectively the market rents of the immediate submarket there, meaning that this is not going to be a project that's restricted to very low income, that it's effectively a workforce development project. The people who are in that market are going to be able to afford to live there. They're going to meet the income requirements, but you're also going to have people, just because of the nature of the product, a new product that comes in, it's just one of those ramifications of bringing in a new development that has amenities, and I'm not sure really how to address that, but you will see people coming in from outside of the immediate submarket to rent these units, given the desirability of them.
Okay, so the point that I'm getting at is, we feel like, I feel like that the South Dade community is carrying a heavy load for a lot of the lower income needs of Miami-Dade County, and so continuing to build something along that line just gives me a little bit of a problem right now, if it's just going to relocate people that are still of lower income, unless we had an opportunity to do something a little bit better. So that is a concern of mine, and I think Mr. Mayor Wallace and I have had this conversation about, we feel like we've done enough in our communities to bring in more low-income, take more of the low-income people from the rest of the county. So that concerns me, that we're relocating lower-income people in the community that is already of need and the competition for the services that we have. So.
And that's where I would, I can get some details for everybody on the rents that we'll be charging on a per unit basis, whether it's a 1, 2, or 3. You can see what the rent level is, and I think you'll see just by what that number is compared to what the surrounding market is, you're talking a higher rent level than what some of the area there may be able to support. That's why I was going into, you're pulling people in, but those people that come in are not necessarily low income. They're workforce, in the sense that these rents are higher than the area's market rents, or at or a little bit higher.
Understand. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Manager, if you want to tell the council the other hurdles that would be involved.
Michelle, why don't you just start, and James, with kind of process where we need to be in order to get us to the November meeting, and we may need some special meetings, but we're not sure yet. So, Michelle, you want to start?
First, let me start with, staff has not done an in-depth analysis of the project because we don't have a site plan to review. Looking at it very, very early onset, the request would necessitate a comp plan text amendment, which requires not only a local approval but a state approval, a master plan text amendment to the Southwest Master Plan traditional multifamily sub-area, in addition to a text amendment to Chapter 30, which is your zoning code. Each of these documents explicitly dictate density at 20 units per acre. So each of the documents would necessitate amendment. The proposal would also necessitate a site plan review, DRC, Planning and Zoning Board, and City Council. For your 3 text amendments, you would need DRC, PNZ, and City Council. Normally, to do a comp plan text amendment, it's about a 6-month process, because we do require the DRC, PNZ, first hearing of the City Council, then it gets sent to the state for review. They require minimum 30 days, and then it comes back to City Council for second hearing. to accomplish the goal to get this, to get the entitlements done prior to the November 19th deadline, we would need to do a 6-month process in about 2 months. So there would be special call hearings for the Planning and Zoning Board and 2 special call hearings for the City Council.
We also have a couple of other issues. One is there's a legal question about whether we can talk to them about the business issues before the zoning changes or after. Richard, what do we call that? It's contract zoning, so we have to be we have to kind of place that at the back end of this process, so we wouldn't really want to talk to them about purchase price or any of the business issues here. And then there's also a requirement they have to sign or we need to sign a piece of paper on the sewage issues. And so we're just going to need to look at that and figure out. We have Pump Station 1 out to bid. We expect to have an award to you by October meeting. Whether that's sufficient enough to meet the state's criteria for that, so that has to be looked at as well.
Okay, Mr. Williams?
Yes, thank you so very much. And let me thank all of the colleagues for their wonderful input and very good questioning. Let me say this in very best way I can say it without being or taking offense to some things. So let me have a USA moment. Let me just say this in this fact, that all of the issues are very relevant. Now, Finance, I need you to help me understand to dissect this piece with this property. When this property was sold for $1.9 million, we borrowed the money from the city, right?
Councilman, I honestly don't recall the transactions. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Rick can answer that question
Okay.
for you in
All
detail.
right, thank you. So when we purchased this shotgun property, we purchased it using city's funds, and we put up the bowling alley as collateral. Is that how that worked?
My understanding of this was in 2007, the city gave the CRA a $2 million, I believe it was a $2 million loan to purchase the Shotgun House properties. The collateral for that loan was the sale of the bowling alley, which was owned by the city.
Right. Once the sale of the bowling alley, then that replenished what we borrowed for this property.
What that does is those proceeds are given to the CRA and given straight back to the city.
Okay, so we've already paid back, well, hypothetically speaking, once the transaction is finished, we would have already paid back the monies that we paid for the land, is that not right? From the proceeds of the sale of the bowling alley.
Well, yes and no. You're paying it back, but it was also your asset. So in other
Right.
words, you had an asset that was yours, plus you made a loan.
Right.
So in essence, you're still down the value of the property.
So when we bought it and it became our asset, we sold the bowling alley to recoup that asset. And at the same time, if it was on the market, so it would go back on the market for sale at this point in time, if hypothetically speaking, in order to get the $1.9 million back.
Well, it was a really unusual deal. So
Right.
I could say, in essence, what the city said was, okay, we're going to lend you money, which you're going to owe us money, and the way you're going to pay us back for our money is that when we sell our asset, which is more money,
Right.
we're going to then take our money and pay back the loan that we just lent you. So either way, the city was out the money.
So once that is
Either
done.
without the money or out the asset, one way or the other, because
So not only did we not only were we in the process of selling the asset, but selling it with the interest part of it, right?
Right.
And also putting it back on the tax roll that will be taxable value. Is that not right?
Right, so if you pay
So-
back, the loan, the loan is paid back, but you've lost your asset, whatever that's worth.
Lost it, but to be back on the tax roll, to be
Right, but-
taxable. So it works out in the end. So my concern is then, if they are proposing the market value of that land, unbeknownst to the presenter, of the 1.9 million, that probably it's worth, or have to do a appraisal value of it. And then also taking part into the ownership of that asset as well, that is in the contract clause. And I hear what the mayor has said. I don't know if to take offense to that or what, or be as a derogatory comment unbeknownst to him. I think he was just trying to use some words, but I think in my culture of understanding, I kind of took offense to it. I think what the project is proposing to bring, and by the way, I live over there, and if I had a choice to move into a better area, I would like to be able to have a choice to move in a nicer area, but I can't because there's no housing. There's nothing that is of quality of value to offer residents an alternative than a area in which is old, outdated, infested with persons or project. And I think the mixed use of what my colleague had just mentioned, I think is very doable. And let's be honest, nobody's come beating down our door trying to develop this property. It is in an unusual, depressed economic area. Nobody wants to take the risk to come in to do that. If they're taking the risk, it's going to be on the east side of the highway. There's nobody came over here that said we want to do a deal on this site. So, all due respect, I hear, and nor do I want in my community those persons from that are, will bring down the community. But I think if we're going to provide quality of life, I think this is the first step. I think that this area deserves quality housing. I think this area deserves a better quality of life. I think this area deserves choices that people can make to live, continue to live on the west side of town. I think this area deserves a project such as this. And the truth of the matter is, when we talk about substandards, nobody's going to move into the area when there's no housing available. There's nothing available to choose from. And I think there have been maybe 10 or 15 houses within the Southwest residential area that has been built, and that was with HUD money. And we see how that went with Galata. Didn't go too far, but there's no choices. There's nothing over there that will bring the residents. And I'm glad I see a local pastor in the audience. Bishop, if you indulge me, Mayor, I'd like to ask the bishop a question, if you don't mind. Would you come? Because he pastored within that area, and it's the persons there. And Pastor Bishop, would you just tell me or tell us, the people that you pastor, are they walking community people? What kind of housing do they live in? Is there any adequacy housing over there that you see? I mean, you're on the ground, you're on the boots, you work over there. Would you kind of enlighten us a little bit?
Most of my parishioners maybe come from another area to the church. One of the things that, again, for me, in that area, we need more economic development. I think, we need jobs on the southwest side. Even if we're putting a housing project there, for me, the problem would be is that those people can't afford those houses. So if we can look at putting a job or some type of economic development place there, that helps the neighborhood that my parishioners are coming from.
Mhm.
Because just having houses that they can already afford really puts us, I think, in a place that we're already in, that people are trying to figure out how to pay their rent. But if they have jobs that are in that area, which we need, it helps us to have a
Yeah,
better
and I think
Southwest area.
I think that's a component of it. But then again, if you had a choice, would you live where you live, where you pasture your people?
If I had a choice, I live, I think, close enough to my church. I don't want to live too close to my church. I've done that before. And so I know the risk of living too close to the church. But I'm
talking about standard of housing.
Standard of housing. There are members who live in that area, who I think housing is good. I think, again, when we look at what's best for that area, it would be that folks are able to lift themselves up from where they are economically to build their own houses.
Right.
Not for somebody to come and build a house with them, but those who are living there.
And I agree with, thank you so much, you may be seated. I think that the Bishop is absolutely correct, is that even though the economic conditions of it is very priceless, but at the same time, you do have working class people in the Southwest. Let me just put that on the record. There are persons who actually are working class. They're not all projects. They're not all at home, sitting out on the porch and don't have a job. They are working class persons. It just so happens it's an older neighborhood. And so I think providing some of the inadequate housing that is already in the area, that this is very, very much needed. Otherwise, what are we going to do with the property? We're going to sit on it for another 10 years, 15 years? What are we going to do? And I just don't know that they were knocked down because they said it was substandard. And then we said that they needed better housing. So here's an opportunity to provide that. And so in my due diligence process, I think right across the street, Florida City is getting ready to do something very similar, if I'm not mistaken. That this is going to be, Florida City has a project as similar as this that's going to be going right across the street from it to help with their economics and housing needs. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I wanted to say.
Any other questions from council? Ms. Fairclough?
Yes, I just have a question to Councilman Williams. What type of demographic were you thinking about? Are you open to any type of demographic?
Oh
or
yeah.
you're amenable to elderly?
What I had envisioned was that number one, in that area, it's a transit community. It's a walking community. I mean, there are a lot of different social and economics and issues over there. At the same time, there are a lot of different diversities within that area. And so I think we lack in Homestead elderly housing, and I think that that can be a component of it as well, because I think as the elderly are getting older, some of them can't afford taxes or what have you, and then I'm afraid of the gentrification of the community. And so if we can provide some sustainability, some housing for that area within need, I believe the standards will come up. If you look at studies that were done of other cities with some similar socioeconomic status that we're in, this infused the community to bring about better change. Now within Lucy Street is going to be expanding to a four-lane street, but to answer your question, I think a mixed use of all, and it's not just Section 8, and I think he's very clear, 10% of that, but I think a portion, a fraction that could be elderly and veterans. I think it can be a veterans community. We have a lot of veterans here in Homestead that could use housing like this. And so those were my frame of mind of thinking of persons that could really benefit from this housing piece.
Okay, there's been no RFP or RFQ or anything on this property since how long?
No, the last history on this was we had an option agreement with a developer to do a charter school there. That option agreement expired, and then later he came in with something, but he never was ready to bring it to the council, and it just kind of died on the vine, and we haven't done anything since.
Okay, so direction from council, does anybody want to make a motion one way or the other?
Mayor?
John, Mr. Burgess?
Yeah, well, I've got a question first for the gentleman that gave the presentation earlier, and I couldn't hear his name over the speaker, so I apologize.
Chris
Is
Shear.
he still at the podium?
Yes, sir.
So you brought up the number of $10,000 per unit earlier. One, how did you come up with that number? What is your formula to come up with that number? Because I spoke with a couple people since this item came to me the other day, and they told me that that number is a little bit on the low end. So I'm trying to figure out how you came up with your number versus what their formula is for coming up with their number.
Yeah, we look at it two ways. One, and this is a requirement of the state, is we have to look at what the market valuation is. So we look at area comps in land sales, comp land sales. The state says that we cannot pay more than the appraised value. They'll hire a third-party independent appraiser. That appraised value will come in that valuation. We cannot pay more than. On the other end, we could pay less than that, but based on the other constraint that we look at is what can the site feasibly support. So we do an in-depth pro forma to understand what the building costs are today, what our soft costs are.
And so you guys have done that, excuse me, in-depth report on that already? Because nothing else seems to have been done in depth as far as site plan and that type of stuff. But you have done an in-depth financials?
Yes, we have a preliminary run of numbers based on projections that are well vetted with experience. We're building down here now. We know what the impact fees are. We have those large numbers that are well vetted. So I'd say we're pretty close to where we can be. And I'm not saying that there's not room for potentially some negotiation within that number, but it's a valuation that we came up with that we know is supportable, that we believe will be supported by an appraisal.
Okay.
Is that all, Mr.?
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Thank you, Mayor.
was that it, Ms.?
I
Okay.
didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to get that out there. If you started talking about motions and stuff, I wanted to get that question answered that I had.
Okay, Mr. Williams?
Yes. Could you, Chris, could you talk to about this? Because I don't want to think that the council is being boxed in here. This is only trying to facilitate a need within the community. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. And I know that there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. But I'm remembering of opportunities and times where we have had persons come make presentation, and for the site of it, to just move it along to be able to even start a process so that the manager could do its due diligence and work. And all of these questions and answers of performers and part, it's just, right now, all of that takes dollars and cents, and nobody's going to put that kind of money into something if we say don't move forward, we don't want anything there. So I think this is at a point to where we need an answer whether to allow to proceed, as the mayor has indicated, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We go back to the drawing board. But at least we give the residents within that area something to hope for, something to look forward to besides trees and sidewalks. Okay, and I think that providing this as an option so that they can do the due diligence. But if we don't ask or move forward to do a due diligence, the questions cannot be answered. And so I'm willing to hopefully allow all of these questions that have been raised, that they come back with some solid, concrete answers. And also, I think the issue of the person trying to maybe so rush is because of the pool of the application. But that's only one mechanism of financing, right? That's not the only mechanism of financing.
That's correct.
So I think, though it may seem as if we're being rushed into something, I think on the opposite side, I think it's who's trying to get the, is estimate all of the financial deals that can be done that will bring low cost to the project, but also make the project viable for the cost of the developer. And as my colleague has said, I'm not in it to leave anything on the table as well. So with that, Mayor, I think Sister McCormick has her thing, but I want to make a motion that just the manager to have dialogue with them, and that he come back to us with his staff and looked at all these things and then be able to answer all these questions, but at least give them the opportunity to do that due diligence.
Is there a second?
Mayor, can I ask this question?
Ms. Faircloth, and then you, okay? Is there a second on the motion? No second.
I had a question.
Ms. Faircloth?
I just want to be clear, Councilman Williams, you would like for us to allow staff to proceed to have conversations with the applicant to gather what information, because I know this is a discussion item.
Yeah.
So what do we want staff specifically to do so
Well,
that I'm clear?
I think what I'm saying is that the questions that have been raised, that those issues and concerns have to be answered. And the only way to do that is to allow them to have a conversation. But if we're saying no, then it wouldn't even matter until the next person who comes up will be in the same boat. That's all I'm saying, is that if it come back and says, you know what, it's not doable, the project's not doable, we looked at it and it's not feasible, then we move on. I don't think this is in, you know, we're going hand in hand to say we're married now. We're not, we're dating.
Mr. Burgess?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question to staff is, because I've heard at quite a few meetings, is that we're stretched thin with the City Hall becoming in its final stages, the theater getting to one of its final stages and moving on, a groundbreaking getting ready to start at the new police station and all that. And with this time crunch that we're hearing about of November, George, is there time for staff to even put into this at this time? I mean, realistically, I mean, I know you always say we can do what you instruct us to do, but we've got millions-dollar projects that taxpayers' money is on the line for right now that need to be addressed and addressed with the utmost attention. Does something like this, with all the things that I hear about, need to be done by November the 3rd? Seems like it's going to be very time-consuming, and on staff, and in particularly the management staff as they try to negotiate again here. So, can I get some feeling on that?
Well, the reason we didn't raise anything in terms of our issues and the issues of price, well, the price issue was something that we didn't want to discuss because of the contract zoning issue. So even if you decide to move forward on this, we really wouldn't want to talk to you about price and appraisals and all that thing until the back end of this process, so we don't get ourselves into trouble. In terms of the staff, look, you know, it's a function of you set the priorities. I mean, do we have a lot on our plate? You know, we certainly do. On the other hand, if this is a top priority for you, we'll shuffle things around, but it's obviously, it's going to take a lot of work on the staff's part to do it. So I think that's why it'd be better that either you're in for the go and we'll put some other things aside, but if you're not in for this, then I think it's actually, the burden will be way more on their part, the developer's part, because they're going to end up spending a lot of money to no end. And I think we talked about that with them. We didn't want to be an obstacle to them. We also didn't want them to be victimized either here. And so I think you really need to decide if this is something that you want to do first, and then we'll back into it.
Yeah, I mean, I just, and Mr. Williams, going back, you know, I wish that we had more information as far as the site plan and things like that, so that we'd be further along in the process as we come, because you talked about being backed into a corner, and we kind of are with the time frame here, and I don't know if staff can do its due diligence and do everybody the best job possible with the time frame that's being presented. I wish we had more time to work through this process so that staff isn't rushed, staff doesn't have to take away from the other big projects that we have out there. That's one of my concerns also, is how are we going to get this done to the best of our ability, because we want to make sure we put our best foot forward as a city, always on whatever we work on. And I'm just worried that there's going to be some kind of oversight on somebody's part, or whatever, as we rush along this process to try to get it done. I look at their projects, and they look like they're very high quality things, and I want to make sure that that's what we're going to get, and I don't have a guarantee of that right now as we move forward. You spoke that there were other ways to finance this. Perhaps that's what they need to look at and come to us with that, so we're not so rushed. And that's one of my thoughts.
Is that all, Mr.? That's all, Mr. Burgess?
Yeah, I'll leave it at that for now and listen to other comments.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, thank you so much. The issue is I think the time structure of it is one phase of the application process in which they're trying to do as an alternative arm of financing. And so I think the constriction of time is not really that is with the applicant or the potential developer. It is with what the state has said that this application. Now, if we had talked to them a year ago, then I would understand that. And as I said before, it's these issues, of course, have to be flushed out. But they're not going to provide a site plan tonight because they don't even have ownership of the property or to say that. They can't provide any other studies.
No, but some sort of rendering would have been very nice.
Let me finish, so that I'm clear. All due respect to you on the phone, is that we're asking a lot for them to provide us tonight, which of course they can't provide. I mean, it's just a letter of intent, an interest. It's interest. We found interest in your community. We think we can make it better and brighter and bigger and bolder. And so I think the intent is if you allow the due diligence process, and be honest, we've got projects going on and they're coming to the nearest of completion. But do the residents of the Southwest residence area have to continue to live without any amenities or any kind of different quality of life? Should they still be subjective to the economic housing that is not existing over there? And I'm pretty sure none of my colleagues will choose to live there if they had any choice to better live. That's where they live at today. But unfortunately, there are some persons that can't afford to go across the east side of the highway. But there are some who live in the community that love the Southwest. And all I'm saying is that we need to provide them an opportunity to be able to have a selection, a fair selection of quality of life. And there are some who can't afford it. We're always going to have issues with jobs. Jobs are always, economic development, that's always going to be there. I don't care what area. I pastor in Liberty City, so don't talk to me about jobs and economics, because you talk about oppression, it's right there. This is nowhere near that. You're talking about persons who live in the projects, Scott Field projects, Lincoln Fields, we can provide such much better to our residents in the Southwest. I think we just need to give them opportunity. If the opportunity does not work, then I don't have a problem saying we look at something else. But at least provide the due diligence process so these questions can be answered.
Okay, there was a motion, there was no second. So what does that tell us?
I mean, I think that, to be fair to George and staff, there should be some, I mean, in order to, I think the position that the manager's taken is that we need direction, including our office, to move ahead and to deal with all of these issues. And we're looking for the council to give us direction. If you don't give us direction, then I think that...
But without a second, that's fairly, there's not a consensus to even get it on the table for a vote.
Right, and what we can do, assuming, because I'm assuming what that means is that it's not, there's no direction to expedite the process. What I think they're going to probably do after hearing this is they're going to go back and figure out, is there some of the comments that you made, they are clearly, after tonight, not going to make their deadline unless something changes. But what they can do is they can go back and now start assessing what your comments were and seeing if they can bring back a project that's of your interest. And also, at some point, it would be helpful for us to get direction as to if they come back with something else, did you want to RFP the process, or did you want to have them take another shot at another project? But we don't need that answer tonight. I think we got the answer that we were looking for, and I'm happy. You're more than welcome to come back, and we'll have another conversation about, you know, what's next.
May I?
Sure.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to propose. We appreciate, you know, you guys taking the time to understand our intent here. We think it's a viable site. We think it's a good demographic to support what we build, and it would be a good amenity, and it would be increase the quality of life for the community. That's our first look. Secondarily, we just happen to be in a position where we have this opportunity for financing in the very short term, and all of these things are starting to come to light that we would have to address to order to get there. It would be a challenge on the developer's behalf just as much as it's a challenge on the city's behalf to make that happen, particularly with the text amendment to the comp plan. That being said, you know, we still do see the value here, and we'd like to propose a new development with the city of Homestead, whether that's in the next 9% cycle or if we find a viable way to execute the development sooner than that, and we will take a look at that. We will come back, propose that execution strategy, and talk about those outstanding issues, which I think a lot of were discussed today, as to how we can make that a reality. So I appreciate you guys giving us the time to present the LOI, and I hope to be back in front of you in the future. Thanks.
Mr. Williams and Ms. Fairclough. Ms. Fairclough?
Yeah, you kind of basically answered the question I was going to ask, because for me, it's really hard to commit to this at this point, considering the concerns that we had. But if you were willing to go back to the drawing board and kind of digest all of the concerns and questions that we had and then come back before us with some more solid information, I think you put us in a better position to make a more educated and informed decision about this property.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, and I would like to have, you know, conversations with staff leading up to that to be able to understand the needs of the community, as we discussed on the elderly side, for instance, and to understand some of the challenges, particularly with the moratorium on water, on the sewer right now, and with the comp plan amendment, to come together with something maybe a little more descriptive and detailed to present.
Sure.
And through the mayor, if I still have the floor, and I would welcome that if you can communicate with staff to help you complete this process. I think that's reasonable to request, so I'm amenable to that.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I agree with my colleague. She's amenable to it, to talk, and to be able to get, you know, they can come back with some objectives and goals that will meet the concerns, and that will be what my greatest expectation was to come out tonight about.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, I just had one more comment. I think it would be very beneficial also if the applicant will be willing to go to the community, to the Southwest Advisory Community, to the Southwest Community, to vet this through them, to see if this is something that they're even comfortable with, so that it helps us to make a decision, because we don't want to make unilateral, arbitrary decisions for, the particular community. So if he would be amenable, and you, Councilman Williams, to spearhead that, to have conversations with the Southwest community, the Southwest stakeholders, to see if this is something that they're interested in as well, while they're in this due diligence period.
Okay.
So what have we just said then, Mayor? Bring me some clarification.
You have no direction to move forward there. It's up to the applicant to come to you with some options.
So how do they come back if they don't go forward? I'm just asking. How can we say, I'm clear on what you just said? Because on what Councilwoman Fairclough just said is, so what are we saying?
To the mayor.
Are we giving them opportunity to discuss? Or what are we saying? So that George will be, so if they knock on George's door, will George open it?
You go ahead, Ms. Fairclough.
Yes. If I understand correctly, the applicant, Chris, he had mentioned that they were willing to go back and kind of fine tune things, and if they had the opportunity to discuss and speak with staff about the specifics with their project, they would welcome that opportunity. So I said I didn't have a problem with that. He suggested on his own to go back and kind of flush things out, and then have the opportunity to talk to staff. That's what I gather from it. And I didn't see anything wrong with that.
Okay, so I guess then what I'm saying is, will they be able to have that opportunity if we have just, is that opportunity available, amenable to at least do that? So they can't come back to not going forward with the letter of intent that they're proposing, but to have conversation. That's what I'm trying to get at. Are we at least amenable to them having conversation so that they can flush out these ideas?
Well, I think that's the ideas that were brought forward, the questions that were brought forward, the concerns that were brought forward. They now have an opportunity to hear from each individual council member that's present as to their concerns, so they can formulate some sort of a guideline as to come back, because they know where the concerns are. So obviously, your door will be open for them to come and speak to you at any time, as would be with anyone, really.
Right, and I think the only other thing I just want to be clear on is that in terms of this particular letter of intent and expediting the process, the answer is no, but the door is open for dialogue and reworking and bringing something that's more in alignment with, and I also encouraged them when I last met with them to meet individually with you all as well, so that they can get some direct feedback from you as well. But yeah, our door is always open, and unless you tell me otherwise, we'll meet with them and we'll try to see if we can get their questions answered and try to make this process as easy as possible.
So, Mayor, then, as a discussion item on a letter, we're not doing any letter because of what we've just discussed. So that I'm clear, they have the opportunity to meet with staff. Am I right, George?
Yes.
Is that your direct, what are you hearing from us tonight?
What I'm hearing is this letter of intent now does not move forward, that we're not expediting a process. They'll come back once they've thought through this night and figure out, do they want to come in with a revised program? Do they want to meet with you all first, meet with the community? That's all up to them, but when they walk in the door, as soon as they ask for an appointment, they're more than welcome to come in, and we'll kind of work with them on, I think, just them better understanding the process and the zoning, and the more we know from them in terms of what other options they have, the dialogue, I think, will be helpful.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
So you have direction now, George, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're going to, now there's no presentation on tab 1, correct? No one here from the Housing Authority?
Yeah, I don't see them here. Maybe they thought it was for the council meeting. I'm not sure.
Okay, so we can't do anything. John, are you still on the phone?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, so tab 2.
Temporarily lost our quorum.
Well, the quorum was met when she was in the room. Now, John Does he not constitute the quorum?
A quorum's got to be in the room.
In the room, okay,
and
so
then,
we'll have to wait.
Councilman Burgess can, so we'll just have
Okay.
to take a little break until she comes back.
Councilman, just for time purposes, I know you have the backpack event tonight. Do we know how much time we have so that if we can kind of order the agenda for, because assuming you leave, we may end up losing our quorum?
Yeah, you're going to lose your quorum.
Okay.
So the meeting might well just be canceled.
Okay, well, we probably can deal with, staff, is there anything that needs to be dealt with tonight? Everything can be pushed on to, yes, as long as...
I'll give as much time as I can, but...
Because I think this was the only item that was time sensitive, so beyond this, everything else can roll onto the council meeting.
I can move them pretty quick if you take them in groups. So
Once we get everybody
Once we get everybody back.
bump them to, because there's a lot of similarities in a lot of them, so.
Yeah. Here, all these are consent items, though. We could hold all, Mayor, truthfully, we could hold all of this to the council meeting. It's really
So
not.
when they get back, we'll just see if they want to adjourn and.
What happened? Where'd everybody go?
Well, you're not here, so we can't have quorum. You had to be present in the room.
We lost two to a break.
All right. Just to FYI, I'm representing the city tomorrow morning.
We all represent the city.
I didn't hear you, Mr. Burgess,
At a transportation forum.
today.
John, it's Richard. How was that?
It's tomorrow morning at 7:30.
Are you in Denver or are you here?
No, I'm not in Denver.
Orlando.
That's above my pay grade.
Okay, so Richard, what, now,
the two presentations, we're not gonna do those?
tab one and.
Okay.
Mayor,
Which two presentations are you not doing?
Well, there's the Homestead Housing Authority.
Right.
And then I think the proposed capital improvement project was given to you, and I think that if anybody has any questions about it or wants to discuss them, you can discuss them, but I think it was there to just orient you to them, and you could discuss them individually or whatever you want to do with them.
Which item did you need, Mr. Williams?
well, no, Mayor, I have a point of personal privilege, and Richard, help me with this. In a point of personal privilege, that has to be granted or not on the Robert Rules of Orders?
Good question. Give me a minute.
And I tell you...
Generally, not to labor it, generally it's granted. I mean, generally, people are
Mayor,
given.
I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be... I think the council needs, my recommendation is some sensitivity classes on words and things, how we describe certain communities. Because I'm here to tell you, I take personal offense to some of your comments, and I just got to say that because I'm upset. I'm upset because of I don't think you intentionally meant to say the things that you said, but how it came across was very, very insensitive to and stereotyping a classification of a community. And I think when we make those subjective statements, we have to consider the demographics and we have to consider the sensitivity in the society in which we live in And so when you make statements of what you've made about certain things as it relates to population of people and economic status and conditions of persons, I take real offense to that. And so I don't know if we need to have classes to be more inclusive in our language on how we intend to express so that we don't offend persons in the culture in which they live in or be subjective to that. And I think that an apology is in order, because I'm very offended by some of the words in which you chose to say things about the depressed area and people that you don't want over there. And we live in America, and we're going to have places, and nobody wants poverty. But to classify that as such, you know, I take very, very seriously offense to those statements. And I think as a mayor representing Homestead, and whether a person makes $100,000 or whether they're on Section 8, it should all be treated fairly and equally. Nobody wants a depressed community. And, you know, representing Homestead, we all do, those comments, I just take very, you know, offense to as a co-laborer on this dais.
Well, it's unfortunate that you do, because it was not meant to be offensive.
That's why
the point,
your apology.
Are you finished?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The point was made to me. My point was to the concentration of people that need resources. That's one of the things that we felt like South Dade is doing its part of providing those communities in those areas wherever they are. So it was not meant to be derogatory towards anyone other than a concentration of an area that we need to bolster up and help, and concentrating more low income, more need was my intent. So that being said, that's what it is. So where are we, Richard?
So I'm still so you're saying that both, what do you mean by that? Because I can't talk to you personally one-on-one. I had to talk to you in this setting. What do you mean by that?
Elevating the status of the community in the Southwest and every other community. In the years past, we have brought in a lot of subsidized housing that has concentrated a lot of people of need in this community. And it's an opinion of mine, and I'm allowed to have an opinion. I'm not being offensive to anyone. It's not based on any color, creed, nationality, anything. It's just that the position is, if we raise the bar a little higher and we can create a little bit better quality of component for people, all people to live in, it raises the bar. So,
and that's what I'm saying. That's do you understand gentrification? Do you know what that means?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You gentrify a community when processes are in place, when you raise the level of such. You then displace members out of the community when you do that, instead of keeping the community intact to up the people that's within the community. And so all I'm saying is that just please, going forward, if you know, a class or two on sensitivity will aid and help, so that you don't come across offensive by nature, even though I don't think it's in you, but I think some of your words that you have chosen has come across as such. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so take that however you'd like to take it, but that's me. And if I'm going to be up here on the day, I'm going to keep it very real with you, and I'll let you know when that part has been crossed. And we live in a place of very, very sensitivity and cultures. And all I'm asking you as a position of mayor, has to be cognizant of the fact that you represent all persons and status and socioeconomic positions.
Finished? Okay, and I think I do. So let's just leave it at that. So we are on tab 2 or what? What are we on?
We're on tab,
a hard time.
we're on tab 3, which is minutes.
You don't ever seem to get any.
4 is sale of personal property. 5 is a contract for auditing services. 6 is a request to increase by,
Mayor, we can just move all
Just
these
move
items
everything
on
forward.
to...
Is there a motion to adjourn?
yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, meeting adjourned.